Hi, and welcome to another episode of Celebrating Small Family Businesses, where we showcase passion in action. And today we are celebrating Ron and Lori Genna of Hudson Duct Cleaning in Hudson, Florida. Hey, Ron. Hey, Lori.
Hi.
Hi, how you doing?
Welcome to the podcast.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you
So
so
that
much.
introduction, that last little part was a new addition, and so I had to really think about it as I was saying it.
And we may edit a little bit of
We
this
might
out.
edit.
Yeah,
This is a wonderful thing about podcasting. We can edit half a word if we want to.
There you go.
Nice.
That's right.
So, tell us a little bit about how did Hudson Duct Cleaning come to be?
So I did a lot of networking in different groups in the area for the last 20 years or so, somewhere around there. Lori and I both have been involved in different groups. There's a group out of Spring Hill, and I met this man, Dan Chapman. And Dan actually, he created this program, of this type of sanitizing air ducts instead of going in there with whips and brushes and all that kind of thing. And so he kind of created that whole thing. And so he did our house, right? He did a mother's house, and we knew him for all those years. Well, when I turned 62 years old, I said to Lori, I said, I guess I'm going to be able to retire now because I'm going to have a Social Security check coming in. And then I looked at the check and said, whoop, I better do something.
Rethink that idea.
Yep.
So I went ahead and I bought a Prius, and I started to do some Ubering, just passive income, just to make a little income. And I wound up doing pretty good. I was making $800 to $900 a week, sometimes $1,000 a week, and that kind of stuff. For Uber driving, it was good, and I love talking to people, and people has always been my thing. So that kind of fit right in with my character and all. And so I'm talking to Dan as he came to treat one of the houses, and he said, "My goodness, you know everything about my business. Why don't you buy like a limited partnership or a franchise or something?" So I went home to Lori, and I was doing the Uber for maybe 6 to 8 months, or maybe a little bit longer than that. And I said, I just need to get more involved in something where I can make some decent money and that kind of thing. And so we wound up talking to him about it and discussed the proposition of buying a limited partnership. And I said to him, do you think it's possible that if I worked pretty hard at it, I can make $1,000 a week? And he just kind of looked at me with a puzzled look, like, "Are you for real? Like $1,000 a week? Because that's like nothing in the business that he was doing." He said, sometimes we make that in a day. I came home and talked to Lori, and we discussed it. We put the money aside, and we paid him, and he trained us in this industry. And then we went ahead and got OSHA certified, where we study mold, bacteria, fungus, and virus. And so we're OSHA certified for mold remediation. So that became an incredible thing. So we started the business, about 4.5 years ago, right?
We started it at right about the time of COVID.
Oh, perfect. Well, perfect. Maybe, I don't know. So that's a great question because we're talking about something that, there we go. We're talking about something that not only kills mold, but it also kills other bacteria, right? And viruses.
And virus
So,
too has been tested on virus.
Sanitation became a big deal during COVID, and
Yeah.
We
was
did
it a
really
boom
well.
for you?
We did really well for when it started with COVID.
Yeah, that's right.
So we had people come to the house with COVID because they so desperately wanted to get out of their home, just because everybody was so homebound. They said, "Can we come over? We just want to come over for coffee and maybe play a game or two." "Sure, come on over." They're here and they're like just sweating profusely, and I'm like, "Are you guys all right?" "No, we're fine. We're fine." Night goes, they leave. The next morning they text and say, "We are so sorry, but we both tested positive for COVID."
We knew it.
And we're like, "Oh, okay." But we kind of knew something was up. We're so sorry. We just had to get out of the house. And I said, "No worries. The house has been treated and everything's good." And we never had the first symptom, the first issue ever because the house had been treated.
And because, the antimicrobials they last in the system. And when you're running the fan, those natural antimicrobials are cleaning the air and any kind of bacteria or virus in the air. It's out of their mouths. It's an airborne virus, right?
Right.
COVID, MRSA, different things of that nature. And so it winds up that it takes 2 hours for a virus to settle for it to be effective. So if it's coming out of the mouth and it's being introduced to antimicrobials, it's dying immediately. And so I always tell people when I do a job, and hopefully I told you guys this when I did yours, but I always tell people that when you have company coming, run your fan, just a fan by itself. It doesn't have to have the air on, but the fan for a half hour before they come and an hour after they leave, in case they come in. You don't know what people are carrying. They don't even know. They don't know themselves. They got kids that go to school. They bring home everything. That's how we got introduced to the whole thing, and it's been wonderful. The first year we signed up and we did a thing with RGA, a networking company that I don't know if you're familiar with them or not.
Yeah, kind of familiar.
Revenue generating activities. And so we signed up with them. Was introduced to them by a man named Gordon, Dr. Gordon. And he introduced us to them. And the first year was, we could say they did about 40%. They gave us about 40% of our business. Yeah. Every year since then, it has doubled and doubled again and doubled again. So it just shows, that, it's a necessity. And we don't ever ask for reviews or testimonies, but people give us reviews and testimonies like the most incredible things that they say. And I'm taken back and I get excited to hear what they have to say.
It was from another group, but she never said anything. I was getting ready to contact her for her annual reshoot, and I saw a post. She said she put on there her review that it was last year. She said when I had it done, my son had allergies, was on allergy medication. She said antibiotics, sinus infection. She said it was over and over and over again. She said since we had this done, she says neither one of us had been on anything, had any issues.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I had no idea until I called her for the annual reshoot. I'm like, wow, this is great. Like a great testimony. Wow.
That excites us.
Yeah.
When we hear stuff like that. And we didn't even know it. It was almost a year later when she actually told us about this. We had no idea. Bad news travels fast. The good stuff takes
more time.
Exactly.
That's right. Well, if you've got a bruise or something hurts, right, it's notifying you that something's going on right now. Right. But try to remember the last bruise you had before that. Where was it? Right? We forget really fast. So when the pain stops, we just move on to the next thing.
Move on to the next pain.
Whatever that is. Oh, my goodness. I've got to ask about the franchise part of it. You said limited partnership, but I had heard franchise before, and I was thinking that maybe this was a national franchise. Is it not? Is it just local that this guy created?
Not really. No, it's not. It's the guy who actually who created it, again, Dan Chapman. He probably has sold maybe 30, 35 of these little limited partnerships to people in different states even.
Okay.
I know there's some in Texas, and there's some in Georgia, and that kind of thing like that he's done. Since then, he's moved to, I think, Washington. And so I'm sure there's another branch going on in Washington right now.
I would bet. Sure. They have plenty of humidity there.
State or D.C.?
DC, no,
No,
state.
Washington State.
State, yeah.
Ah.
It turns out we lived there for a while. So yeah, well, they used to joke about they have slugs out there that are I mean serious big slugs, and they joke about that being the state bird.
Like we do with our famous palmetto bucks.
Ooh.
But yeah, they,
In 1975, when I first moved down here to Florida, I was 18 years old, and I came down. I never seen a palmetto bug before, and I moved into an apartment complex that had these big beams running across, rustic beams going across there. I was in bed one night, and I felt something land on my chest. It just fell off the beam right on my chest, and so I instantly just did this, and squeezed, and I felt all those, like if something crushing my hand. I looked at it, it was a palmetto bug. My first experience.
Welcome to Florida.
I'm telling you, I can remember waking up and feeling something and waking up and having something crawling on my arm. And
Oh yeah.
probably my worst one was I had a hoodie, hooded sweatshirt, and I put it on, zipped it up, and threw the hood up, and whatever it was in the hood, and it went down my back, and I was dancing. Connie probably remembers that. It was quite a show.
I do. It was quite funny actually.
Oh, Florida.
That would be funny, right?
Told you we have fun on these
That's
right.
podcasts.
Because it wasn't you.
It wasn't you.
That's why it's
No.
No.
No, the only one I really had was we were sitting in a movie theater and I had my arm down and
Oh, that
Yeah.
is awful. I think there's only one thing that could be worse than that, and that would be like if a mouse or something crawled on you.
there
That would
you
probably
go.
be worse.
Yeah, I would like not like that either.
Yeah. So
Well,
let's get off a bug.
Yeah, so
about
about 4 years ago, and you found this, but I know from knowing you. So for our listeners,
Yeah.
we have met. You mentioned we are customers of yours and love the product.
Love it.
And
I just look forward to
And we
it
also-
coming because I love the smell.
yeah,
smells
yeah.
good. Yeah, right.
Oh,
does.
fabulous.
And then we've also involved in that same networking group, so we
Yes.
do have a history together. So I've heard you speak, and I know that prior to this, back in many years past, you guys have been in business together
Yeah.
in real estate investing and flipping.
Yeah.
Is that right?
That's correct. I guess years ago we decided, not to allow other people to determine how much we're worth, and that would be, job, right? And so I've been unemployed for like 35 years, so self-employed. But when we got together, I was just now breaking into. I'll tell you a really funny story. You ever heard of the company called Melaleuca?
Mhm.
Yeah. So I went to work hard and built a pretty large organization with Melaleuca. I did it in 3 Denny's. The Denny's in Hudson, the Denny's in Trouble Creek Road, and the Denny's down at Palm Harbor. I would meet people every day at a different Denny's and sign them up, and I had a pretty good
Very
business.
good at it.
Business, yeah. And so then it wound up that Lori and I got together, and I was just getting into buying and selling properties, and so I had to look at it and say, this don't make any sense. I'm getting $25 for a sign-up fee and maybe $2.50 on their order every month, so I had to build up a whole bunch of them, and I had it to where I was doing maybe about $1,200 a month in residual income. Well, it's kind of a funny thing because we and I'm going into the real estate part of it, but here it is 22 years later now, that in 21 years of that, I haven't even looked at that business, and every month we still get a check from Melaleuca, which is a great testimony to that particular company.
It is,
But-
and that also puts you in a rare, a top. I don't know if it's top 10% or 5% or whatever, but
Really,
in that
I don't
industry,
even
that
know
Oh
my
yeah.
stuff. I mean, it's gone down, 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 down. You
But
know,
we still
people.
get
Yes,
We still
that
get
is.
a check.
It will, because there's attrition, people's lives change, and
Nutrition,
it
and
just
I'm not
happens.
on top of it. I don't
Yeah.
connect with it for 21 years. I haven't looked at it. So, but that broke me into buying and selling properties. And so, when I got with Lori, with the thing I was missing was those organizational skills. I'm the people person. I make the deal. I'll close the deal. But to have somebody put all the paperwork together and do all that stuff, and she's just like incredibly good at it. In fact, I'll tell you a funny story after this. But um, I put her in a position with an accountant who had papers everywhere, all over the office. And I said, "Oh, my wife could straighten that out in a week." So, well, she couldn't. She was crying because he was just scattered everywhere.
I
Anyway,
couldn't do it.
it just didn't work out. It was too far gone. So, but that's how good she is, though. I mean, she's just like organization. And so with that, we wound up buying and selling, flipping and keeping over 40 properties till 2008 when the market fell. And then we were able to unload, thank God, 9 of those properties real quick. And that's gone from there. But it was an interesting time, and I still like to dabble, in buying property here, property there. Spoke to somebody last week about maybe buying a little mobile home park, that has where they own the property, not where you
Rent the property.
rent the property. I don't like that kind of thing. Where the people actually buy the mobile home and they own their own property and that kind of stuff like that.
We've got a history there too. My parents started and ran a mobile
In the
home
early
park
'80s.
in the '80s.
Nice, very nice.
During the boom times.
Yeah.
And we were selling the land, and it was like swimming upstream, because we were one out of 50, and the other 49 were renting the land, and so all the customers that they only could think was
That was their only paradigm.
no sense. Why in the world would I give you $10,000 for a lot when I can just pay the rent, and the rent's so cheap? And oh, by the way, that was when the interest rates were 18% on CDs.
Was it? Oh, yeah,
It was a very hard way to go for us back then.
Wow. No, that's great. So that's basically it on the real estate part. Well, I just never saw any sense of working for a company pretty much all my life. When I came to Florida in 1975, within a year or two, I started developing my own janitorial service. I had the Columbia restaurant. I had the Howard Johnson chain at Howard Johnson's. I had Crawdaddy's restaurant on the Causeway. I had Chief Charlie's restaurants. I had all that. I built my first house at 22 years old. And so I was just like, just never saw any sense in
But
it.
you're just kind of a natural entrepreneur.
I love it. I really do. I really do.
Absolutely, he is.
But I always missed that. And now I have that and this. So it works out really good.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Okay, so that brings us to another one of our. You just answered one of our favorite questions, which is, how have you guys figured out, your roles and
Your lane.
your lane and all that, and how working together. Clearly, you knew your strengths. You figured them out real fast, and you go.
I definitely know his lane is to do the duct cleaning. That's not my lane. They would not.
And we've
want
never
this.
seen you out there doing that, by the way.
No, that's not my lane.
Well, here's one indicator of the lanes. You look at my face and you look at hers, and you could say she's definitely the one who gets out to the networking meetings now and does all that kind of stuff and talks about the company.
Yeah, she works well as the face of Hudson Duct Cleaning,
Yeah, she does.
and marketing is.
However, I will say he is the person that if a phone call I would rather him taking the incoming calls, because if a call comes in, 95% to 98% he will close. Just on that first phone call. Close them, set them, and they're done. For me, I'll get them, but I may not get that same percentage. But he's just a natural because he does it. So he knows every in, every out, and every aspect of it. Plus, he's the one that's trained, certified, so he knows all the technical stuff and I don't. So that's his lane.
It's a weird thing to study mold.
I have no interest. I'm more into Brahmins. I don't know.
That's right. That's my girl.
So what is something that that being in business together, whether it's the real estate or Hudson or both, that you've learned about each other that you didn't know just from your personal relationship?
Well, I'll tell you one thing I learned about Lori is when she started out going to networking and speaking to people, she was a little shy about it, and that kind of thing. But I tell you, she is the most wonderful asset to the business, and I've learned that about her. I'd rather her go to a meeting and talk than me, and the people do too. The people appreciate it when she shows up and talks
Yeah.
instead of me. And so I think I've learned that about her. That she's not only just organized, but that she's a great communicator. In fact, there have been times I've been in conversations with people. I'm trying to tell them something, and it's not coming across right. And then she'll get into the conversation, and she'll tell them what I'm trying to say, and make it so clear. It's so easy. I'm like, why? How couldn't
See, man speak. There you go.
There we go. So that's what
Ron
I've learned.
speak.
Well, I think it's that. I would hear that as that same kind of organizational skill, that you're more go with the flow and you're just kind of going along, and
Yeah.
Lori's okay. Let's package this up neatly, and okay, here it is. And
I just recently I was trying to explain something to some friends of ours, and I felt this little foot under the table kick me. And I let her take over, and she said it so perfectly what I was trying to say.
I fixed it.
Because
oh, we got that in common. I'll get running on something. Oh my gosh! And I've got to make sure I include all the details, and every once in a while, if it's something I'm really passionate about, I get a little preachy, and Connie will be tapping me or patting my knee or something. It's like,
there you go.
enough. Oh, perfect.
And then afterwards, she said, "Why were you saying that?" I said, "You know why? Because you cleared it all up perfectly."
Lori, what about you? What have you learned about Ron?
One thing that I've learned, and I learned it more with this than anything, but he has such a genuine love for people that he wants to. When he goes to somebody's house, he doesn't just go to do the job. He wants to go. He wants to explain it in full detail. He wants them to understand because he cares about them. He genuinely cares about their well-being, their health, and I've never seen anybody like that. Most people, they go, it's a job, they get it done, they move on. This one here, I'll say, how did it go? Oh, it went good. What took so long? Well, I was talking to them, I was explaining it, and, they had some questions, and I wanted to make sure they felt good about it.
Right.
And a lot of people just don't do that. And that's something I've learned about him. He genuinely just loves people so much that he cares and wants to make sure that they fully understand what they're getting and why it's in their best interest. And it's been in this, it's been in everything he's ever done. He always goes that extra to explain because he just cares so much about the people to make sure.
It always comes back. I can't tell you the things people just give me. It's amazing.
He comes home with all sorts of stuff.
I don't never ask for anything.
I get nothing. He gets all sorts of stuff.
There was one lady. You want that guitar? Okay, take it. That guitar, the amplifier, everything, and one's up. Yeah. Really? Thank you. Yes. Just yesterday was it, or day before yesterday? Day before yesterday. This lady I did her place, and this mold remediation company said to her she has to throw out all her clothes and all her shoes, and she had like 50 pairs of shoes and clothes. I said, I don't think so. I said, let me call up a friend of mine who's a mold remediation person. I did that while I was there, and he said, send me a copy of the report. I sent him a copy. All this happened while I was there. And he said, no, the levels are nowhere near high enough for anything that are on their report. But they're doing this now to people, taking advantage and then directing them to their friends who have mold remediation companies. And the testing companies, one company, and a mold remediator or something, and they're giving them all this business and all this stuff. And then they're telling this poor lady, I mean, thousands of dollars worth of stuff she would have just thrown in the garbage. I said, no, no, no. She gave me a brand new pair of Adidas. And I just said, wow. I said, who else lives here? She says, oh, my boyfriend who was here, he has all these Adidas and all these special shoes and all this stuff like that. And he don't even want them. I said, well, what size are they? Size 13. That's my size 13. I was like, are you kidding me? She says, you want them? Take them. What? $110 pair of Adidas Pro,
Well, I mean, that's an exchange of value right there. It's just a non-monetary exchange, right? Because you saved her tons of money.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And she was, grateful and.
We do stuff like that all the time.
All the time. All the time. It's amazing. I love it. I really do. And the tips I get are phenomenal. I never, you don't think you're going to get a tip or anything. I get tips all the time.
Well, that I got to say, I mean, the cost of the treatment is so low compared to what some other solutions.
Don't tell me.
But it works. Oh my God.
It works.
It's just I look forward to you coming. I mean, we don't necessarily need it every year, but it's kind of like, oh,
Yeah.
have Ron come there. Just bring him on. We'll take care of it. Yeah. Because it smells so good.
Yeah, I was thinking we need to go to every 6 months just to keep the smell going.
I have customers
He
that do
does
that.
have some that do that.
I have a lady in Clearwater. Her name is Donna, and she has me come every 6 months faithfully.
I think she's more like every 5 months because it creeps up a lot. Her name on the list.
She does.
That's cute. Cute. And I even think you gave Mark a bottle of it or something for.
Oh yeah, he had to have his own to spray around so he
To
He
spray.
can smell it.
could.
That is so funny. Well, he's got 3 dogs too, so whoa.
Yeah, the smell
Yeah,
will
there's
help.
that.
There is that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, just love people, and that's what it boils down to.
That is a theme right there. The passion and action that I mentioned, that kind of naturally came out of talking about one of our interviews. But I as soon as I wrote that, I said, wow, that's like throughout. That's so many people. And I interviewed a guy recently that he wasn't a fit for our podcast, but he's going to be on our YouTube channel. And he had worked at HP and Apple and so forth, but he went back and did a study of these major corporations from a certain date anyway, and the ones that had clearly defined values, like they had written them down, they had a code of values that was throughout the company, and they lived by them. Those companies lasted a long time. Like HP had their sales, I think they had a 20% year-over-year increase in sales every year for 50 years.
Wow.
They had very
That's
clear. They call it the
phenomenal.
HP way. Apple was similar to that. When they had clearly defined values, they did really well. When they lost sight of their values for a while, they didn't do so well. And he said the companies that either didn't have values or didn't follow them, they're no longer around. And I see that here, and I see that in the businesses that are doing well, and especially that love what they're doing. They've got clear values like you guys do, and they love their customers. It's about the customer experience, and the money comes as a byproduct.
That's right. That's right.
And that's
exactly.
such a huge thing. And I just, I want to call that out because I hear it in what you're saying, even though you're not saying it specifically.
And the ones that don't care, like we've talked about,
Yep.
all they want is your money, and they could care less about customer service. They could care less about ever really seeing you again.
Right. That's
Sure.
right. That's right. I like the ones that you see in the magazines. They got the $179 specials, but some reason they have to come to your house to give you an estimate, and they generally walk out with $700 to $1,300 is what the people have told me. That they've gotten estimates for anywhere from $700 to $1,300, and they're going to use a whole different method that has been proven to do a lot more damage to the systems. Because we don't in Florida we don't have metal ductwork. We have flexible fiberglass ductwork, and we have fiberglass plenums and stuff like that. And they're going with these heavy duty vacuum systems and brushes and whips and stuff, and you're just doing a lot of damage. Not to mention, the biggest problem is they're not OSHA certified and they don't study mold. But when you get those things stirring up in there, you're stirring up millions, not just thousands, millions of mycotoxins that are gotta go. They gotta go someplace, and they're hungry. They want to eat, so they're going to cling to your walls, your cabinets, and you know all kinds of
Your
places.
lungs.
Yeah. You don't want that.
Don't want that.
No. We were living in a rental property before we bought our house, and we discovered that there was mold in the ductwork, and they had to replace some of the ductwork, and they brought in a cleaning company to do just that, and had the vacuum system and the filter and all that. And so we lived through that.
Yeah, we did.
Fortunately, we didn't experience any health problems from that.
But we moved out pretty quick
we
after that.
weren't there long after that either.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. One of the things.
Yeah, so you called your company Hudson Duct Cleaning, but it is truly sanitation. You're not.
That's
what's different.
exactly
You're not
right.
doing the rotating brushes or anything. You're not disturbing the ducts. You're not touching the ducts, actually.
No, when we got into this, the SEO, for a person to find us, we had to use that name,
Right.
Hudson Duct Cleaning, because when they put in the biggest search is air duct cleaning. That's so if we used sanitation, you wouldn't find us pretty much on that or any of that stuff. So that's the reason why it was Hudson Duct Cleaning.
Super.
Cool.
Yeah, SEO. That's the reason why.
You got to go with what works, right?
You got to
That's
go
right.
with what works. That's
And what
right.
and what gets your message out there, because that's the important part, is getting the message out there that if people use your product and your service, they're going to be healthier. You can't help but be healthier.
Healthier is right. That's right. We can't make any claims of
No.
any of that stuff, but we know they're breathing better air in their home. And so I always say to people, well, you like drinking pure water or garbage water, filled with chlorine and ammonia and all the stuff, or do you have some kind of a filter system in your house, or do you drink purified water? What do? You're always trying to improve your health by drinking better water. Well, what about the air you breathe? You want to have the best air that you possibly can breathe in your home.
Right.
And one of the things that Lori says at every meeting is, according to WebMD, mold in your house is the biggest threat to your health, bar none. There's nothing bigger than mold as a threat to your health.
Yes.
Powerful.
We've had
that's a
some
powerful
family
message.
members that have been affected by mold.
Yeah.
And
Well, the
the
guy-
pets.
There was,
And
I knew a guy. I've met him. I know of him because of a friend, but he was struggling with. He was unable to sleep for nearly a year, and he had tried. He had fortunately he had a fair amount of savings, so he was able to try a lot of different things. But he tried every medical treatment there was. He tried psychedelics. He got they couldn't figure out what was wrong.
Wow.
But he just literally couldn't sleep. And if sleep deprivation after a while starts to your insanity, right? It really messes with you. And it was affecting his health. And so he found out ultimately that there was mold in his house. And so he moved out of the house and the whole thing and got better.
He got better.
But a year of that. So what's the long-term damage on something like that? We don't know because everybody's different.
But he didn't exhibit the most
classic.
common classic symptoms are respiratory symptoms, but he didn't exhibit that. So they weren't looking for mold. And that's
Isn't that funny? If you go to the OSHA site and you see what mold, all the different things that mold can do to your health, it is astounding. It's like they list about 30 different symptoms, that mold will bring, and the different sicknesses that it'll bring to you, including Alzheimer's, because it pierces the brain barrier. It's able to pierce, the bacteria is able to pierce the brain barrier. And so it actually can cause, and that's part of that insane thing. You start going insane, you can't sleep, you're breathing mold and all that kind of stuff like that. You start going crazy. We had one lady, I, I forget what her name is, but one lady, she actually had to move out of the house, and then because she was going like crazy, like going insane, you know. And she got out of the house, and her thinking started clearing up after a while. The guy Gordon that I mentioned, who got me into our RGA, his son, they moved into a house, and they didn't have me treat it. I told them first, let me get in there, and it wound up his son caught some kind of a infection, bacterial infection, and he died at 28. And then Gordon died about a month later, and the rest of the family moved out of the house. They, you know, uh, and then the guy who got me into this company, his own son treated what they call a sick house, which is mold infested. They call it a sick house.
Yeah.
And he went to go treat this house. He got infected, and he died as a young boy too because of that. And so it's not a joke about, really.
Wow. Just that one exposure in doing the work.
Because the doctors can't figure it out and stuff, and they're just doing the medicines and the different things that they're used to prescribing and doing things, which makes the immune system worse, lowers the immune system. Then they go back into that environment again with a lower immune system, and you're just about done.
Your lunch.
Wow.
Your lunch.
Literally.
Literally.
Unfortunately, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
Mm. Well, so take mold seriously.
And get your ducts cleaned and sanitized.
Your duct
Sanitized. Amen. That's right.
Clean air.
Yeah.
And customer
Hey,
service.
that's a good law. I
Rules
like
of
what
the
he
day.
said. Take hold of your mold.
There you go.
Oh, there's that entrepreneur. Right
There you go. There you go.
Guys, any last words of wisdom before we wrap up for?
Or wait a minute. What's next?
Oh well, yeah.
What's next?
What's next for Hudson Duct Cleaning?
Or what's
for you
what's
guys?
next for you guys?
Well, we've been branching out more and more into the commercial industry. We wound up landing the Access Medical Community account and
Oh wow, cool.
ABC Solutions. We got them, and so we've been enjoying that because let's face it, there can be 10 units in one building. I don't have
Absolutely.
to travel for, it's much better. But people are actually, what's great is the people are working there while I'm treating. They don't have to get out.
Yeah.
You don't have to leave.
Right.
It could be
That's
done
right.
during
That's right.
hours.
So you're not disrupting business.
Not
You don't have to
disrupting
work it
business.
till midnight to get it done.
Right.
Exactly, which I have though. But
Yeah.
I mean, but I don't have to.
Right.
It can be done while it's there, and that's the good thing because it's pet friendly, it's child friendly. It's the only thing OSHA allows me to use without a mask, and so just that's been a great thing. So.
Well, I would think also in the commercial space, one of the concerns after the COVID, everybody was working from home and now,
Right.
There's a return to the office. There's this kind of debate going on about safety. People are still concerned about safety in the office. And so I would think that this would add a level of comfort in having that cleaner air in the workplace.
Tremendous amount of comfort to the people who are working there. We had one lady who came home from her office. She worked 3 days a week at her house, and then when she go back to the office, her face broke out with all this, like some kind of infection. Then another person in the office got the same thing. The whole face broke out and all that kind of stuff. So you got to tell, it's in the building, there. So yeah, so that kind of thing. So we treat places like that where they got people who are getting sick. Now, if you go to and you look up some of the cases that have been settled, Morgan and Morgan, one person was awarded $55 million from Morgan and Morgan. Of course, they got a bulk of it, but that's how serious it is. One person went to work at a place and got sick and got with this doctor, and they sued, and
They won.
they won. It's not something. I tell people with apartment complexes, you got apartment complexes, you're moving people in and out all the time. Get those things treated. ALFs. We can do ALFs where people are in there. The older people, they don't have to worry about leaving the building or anything like that. We can do all of those things.
Wow.
That would be, I think, a huge
Yeah.
point for, like you said, both of those type of facilities. Huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we've had a lot of experience with both of those.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh,
you're a
my
fun
goodness.
group of people. I'll tell you that much, aren't you?
I know.
Oh, yeah.
So now we know where you're going.
So how do you want people to find you? I know it's hudsonductcleaning.com is your website.
Correct. Yes.
Is there any other way you would prefer? Would you like
Yeah,
people
you
to contact you through the website or otherwise?
Through the website, but the best way is the phone number. So the phone number is 727-755-8060. That's 727-755-8060.
And so we will just leave a teaser here for our audience. Ron is also a keyboard player and singer
Yes.
and plays in a band. So we'll have to talk about music the next time.
There you go.
Thank you. Very
Thank
good.
you guys so much for spending
Yes.
this time with us.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
You guys
We've
made it
loved
fun.
it.
See you soon out there.
And we will
All
see
right.
you soon.